my daughter Hope, the other day she they do craft stuff all the time. Like the house is toe up from all this like cutting and coloring and glue. And so she comes up to me and she hands me this piece of paper and she's like, Dad, I made this picture for you. And I was like, oh, of course. I'm like, this is awesome. It's the best thing I've ever seen. She's like, yeah, it's upside down. Oh, I mean, it's awesome. It's the best thing I've ever seen. And she's like, yeah, I did this like this because I'm an artist. And I was like, yes, you are. And you need to fight to save that. Like, I want you to always know that you're an artist. Don't ever let that go. And so she gets to control how long she believes that she's an artist. Right? That's one of the things that's in her control. That's one of the variables in her life that she gets to manage for the rest of her life. How much she believes that she's an artist. So in our churches, how many of you, does anyone here not work at a church? Okay, cool. Oh, a couple guys. Cool. So I'm going to talk about in the context of church, just apply it to what you do. It's going to be pretty much the same principle. So in a lot of our churches, like we are responsible for the creativity that happens, like the expression of creativity that happens in our churches. But a lot of times we might actually forget that we're artists because we're too busy changing batteries and light bulbs and fixing computers and phones and all that other stuff. So today I want to talk a little bit about creative process. I want to talk about like how we move creatively from idea to kind of execution. And I'm going to camp out most of the time on like the brainstorming session and like how to create really, really fun, creative meetings. Okay? So in order to get to the creative meeting, there's a few things that have to happen first. Okay? The first step, when I came to the church that I work at, we had a pretty loose creative process. So we've been refining it since I arrived. And one of the processes that I love is Disney uses a 3-room process to create their films. And so when I read about that process, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. With a couple tweaks, that could really work well for how a church does it. So in our context, there's 5 steps. In your context, there may not be. There might be 2, there might be 1. You know your context. But what I hope and pray is that over the course of the next 13 minutes, that you guys all get to learn a little bit about one way and how to adapt it to make it your way. Okay, so if you take what we do and you just cut and paste and apply it over your environment with your leaders and your teams, it might work and it might not. So try and see and then start adjusting and tweaking. Okay. How many of you have ever used Photoshop? Okay, a good number of you. Those of you who haven't, stay with Publisher, it's fine, it's not a big deal. But Photoshop, when I started working with Photoshop, I'd never had a lesson on Photoshop or anything. I just started kind of hacking my way through it. What I love about Photoshop is there's not one way to do something, there's a lot of different ways. Now there's probably a shorter way, but there's multiple ways to get to the same spot. And today, this is one way to get to where we're going, okay? So if you know a shorter way or a better way, that's super cool. Do it. All right, so for us, we start the creative process. I'm going to talk in the essence of a series, okay? So when we're building a series and we're trying to put a series together, we start with a 50,000-foot approach to what we're doing. When we end, we're at about a 500-foot approach, okay? So 50,000 foot is our senior leader. He's our main communicator. Our entire creative team, which for our team is 3 people in communication, 2 people in music, 1 person in experience, a coordinator, myself, and then we always bring 1 person who has nothing to do with our team, just so that we have a completely outside lens to add to the mix. And we're at 50,000 foot. We're talking about, like, our pastor will be like, hey, I'm thinking that I'm probably going to speak about faith for 4 weeks. Or I'm going to speak about relationships for 6 weeks. I'm going to talk about giving for 3 weeks. He hates talking about giving, so 3 weeks, that would be like a marathon for him. But so like we're going to take the calendar, we're going to identify where the blocks are. We're going to identify what the bye weeks are, like the little one-offs that are massively trap weekends for everyone who does the job that we do. Like that's the weekend everybody's energy dips and like all hell breaks loose. So we're going to build that schedule in that meeting. In preparation for that meeting, it's our responsibility as a creative team to have identified some themes and some titles to take out to, we do this at a farm, so to take to the farm with us. And when he says, hey, I want to do a series on faith, and this is actually an actual one that just happened, he was like, I want to talk about faith in like February. And I had just walked through Barnes & Noble and saw this book that was titled, There Goes Gravity. And I was like, oh, what a great title for a series that would be sometime. And when he said faith, well, sometimes when we realize we need faith the most is when we've lost all hope and the bottom's fallen out. And so I was like, well, there's this title. And he's like, oh, that could really work well. So now we know it's 4 weeks. We know the title. We know kind of a little bit of direction. Again, we're not trying to dig into multiple weeks or anything. We're just block and tackle 50,000 foot.